Welcome to the molybdenum software show, where we are looking for more participants because we're only two. We are. uh, I'm quite happy with what we're doing, and yet this could benefit greatly from growing to more participants. So if you feel you got what it takes to participate, and you feel that it would be fun for you, then we are doing this. What is it now? UTC noon. UTC noon, UTC weekdays. That's when we record. All right. Take the helm, Jeremy.
Right. And mob, we are starting a new branch, aren't we? How exciting is this?
Yes, we are. It's exciting because I feel we're doing things right. So I'm pleased that we refactor early. So starting a new branch feels like enjoying the benefits of our past work.
Well, let's see how it goes. We can do a good trim. Satisfying. Okay. It would like
Trim
to
never just trims. I think it always this requires confirmation.
That's nice. Weird. Can't see my cursor.
I can see it.
Oh, I mean not my mouse cursor. My terminal.
Carrot?
Yeah, is that called a carrot?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Something about the way they do the confirmation made that disappear. Okay. So document API. And that's what we're doing now. Okay, let's do it.
I would suspect that doesn't have work, but I would check out the base branch and then
Yep.
mob start.
So let me do get diff. Get diff.
First, I would suggest first mob start.
Okay.
And then when we are on the mob branch, we see
Right.
some mob next commits. If we have mob next commits here, I think we may as well drop them.
Yeah.
But to make sure, we could diff against the base branch.
Yeah. So this was us trying out Utopia, which
Okay.
was an unpleasant enough experience that we decided let's try a different web framework. So yeah, this was like working and was a path, but I think we can abandon it. So shall I do a mob done reset to upstream main? Excuse me. Get reset dash shard upstream main mob start. No, why are there uncommitted changes? Get reset dash hard.
Because it's their state, the stage. You need to like git reset.
Get restored RM. Okay, here we go. Mob start. Now I'll actually let Nick do his thing.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, do I need to push the base branch?
Did you push? Yeah.
Nope. I'm surprised that push did nothing. Almost makes me worry I didn't achieve my goals here. Huh? There we are. And then where is document? Yeah. That is 10 weeks ago. Okay, so I clearly failed to do what I wanted to do. Mob done. Let's check a little more carefully. Get batch origin. Let me make sure origin is what I think it is. Yep, not like a fork I have. Okay. Get reset dash dash hard origin main. There's our problem. Okay, now we're done. Get push. Let's check. All right. Sorry for fumbling around. I'm getting hung up because, like, in some projects I use upstream where I have forks, and then in projects where I don't have forks, I use origin, and I don't know. I need to come up with a workflow that doesn't confuse me.
Just
Great.
be aware.
I don't like being aware. So, go test, that'll pass. And here we are doing it. API circ lib. This is going to look a lot like whatever poem. Oh, 5 minutes on the timer here. Yep, that's drop down. Okay. Open API.
Want to start with some tests?
I like the sound of that. Okay, so this is an example of how to use it. I mean, I guess we can start by querying for the Open API JSON in our test, but I don't know. I don't even know where it will be hosted.
Where is it? Where it typically is, I suppose. You can find that out. LLM.
Is there a normal location? I thought we looked into this originally. Let's okay. This thing.
The modern.
I don't know. Okay. An Open API document may be made up of a single document or divided into multiple connected parts at the discretion of the author. It is recommended that the root doc be called openapi.json or .yaml, but it probably doesn't say where it goes. Slash docs seems reasonable to me. How about you? Putting it under slash API feels weird. It's not our API. I mean, I guess you could say it's our API. Our API exposes an HTTP GET endpoint that returns a description of the API itself. let's start writing the test. Where is this test going to go? This is API test. It'll be a sibling of SD notify here.
Yes.
Okay. Except it'll use test context, not database context. Okay. Where are our other API tests?
Yeah.
Test.rs? Okay, got it.
Remember we said something about, I said I would suggest we consider, before adding more endpoint tests, converting this to a macro.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the benefit of that is we'd lose a layer of indentation. And
Two, kind of.
We'd lose two?
Two, maybe three.
Oh, then I'm not understanding the plan.
Because, that async move is another implementation detail that we won't have anymore.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess what I'm expecting the code to look like is something, more like test.
It can even generate the function, the test function. But we'd have
I see.
just a macro invocation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So I see how 2 layers of indentation could disappear. Unless there's ever a situation we anticipate where we'd have a test where we'd want multiple test contexts. But I can't think of one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll rotate to you. I'd be inclined to start with a macro that doesn't define the function, and then see how we feel about it. Just gets rid of the with helper.
Why is that?
Just doing one thing at a time.
I would inclined to start by completely reimagining it from the invocation.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, that's fine too. It's been a month since I signed up for my Hetzner account. I was able to request access to port 25 on outbound TCP connections, port 25.
Mm-hmm.
Which means my VM that I've spent €5 on is now actually doing something. It is a fully configured mail server now.
What's DM?
I was paying for a VPS, a VM in the cloud with
VM. Okay.
With Hetzner in Oregon, out here in the United States. German company, but they've invaded the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
They seem like cool people. So yeah. I sent emails. It was so exciting. I felt like, it was all the excitement of the internet that I missed when I was a kid, like self-hosting your old mail server.
Good.
So there's this website, mailtester.com, where you send an email and it says, okay, send an email to this randomly generated address. And then it gives you a report of how spammy your emails look, and for technical reasons.
I didn't have that when I was a teenager.
I mean, I think many of these standard DKIM, SPF,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, if the standards existed, they weren't used yet, or I don't know. I don't know the history of all this. But anyways, I got a 10 out of 10 on mailtester.com. I felt like, I got my gold star in class. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to send an email to myself my personal Gmail, and
Wow.
immediately went to spam. I was like, oh,
Oh,
I did everything. This is what everyone on the internet says, is no matter how hard you try, your stuff will always get marked as spam. So I then reported it as not spam, and hopefully my silly little mail server's reputation is moving up in Google's estimation, but I have no idea. All right. So
good luck.
do we want to change the name of the mob branch if we're doing this, or should we just? I'm fine with
No,
overloading.
you're totally right. Totally right. It's switch C test macro API test macro.
I wouldn't use API here. I think this is just a test context. Do we only use it in the API? Can we also use it for fetcher?
No, this is API test util. Is it? Yeah,
Sorry,
this is
you're
where the
right.
test
You're right.
context
You're
is.
right. Okay. Well, sorry. I guess I was wondering, should we start with database context?
No, that's not a macro. That's
I
used
know
in
it's not a
the
macro.
implement. I mean, it doesn't deserve to be a macro. It's used in the application itself. I mean, I'm not saying.
Wait, say that again? It's used in the application itself?
Uh-huh.
Where?
In database context is defined in crates DB context and used. No, is it? It's not, is it?
I would be astonished. I mean, our application isn't starting up a Postgres database.
No, you're right.
Maybe are you saying it's in the wrong place, like from a Rust idiomatic perspective?
No, I'm not saying anything because now I realize that it's just for testing.
It's for testing and for like developer tooling.
Right. I think we can work on this from the outside. We don't need to change database context yet.
I agree. I think we
And
can do it
it's used in
step
so
by step.
few places that it wouldn't provide as much benefit as our motivation was. We are going to write more tests, and that's done using test context. So
Okay.
let's make that
Yeah,
experience
I
better
I
with the
can't see the
macro.
future well enough to know if there's a reason to do outside in versus inside out. And let's just do it.
Okay. So API. So I made an API test macro.
And then I guess the
Test
macro would not
context
be called
macro.
test context. It would be just like test with database or something, right?
Correct, because the test context is just an implementation detail of
Right.
what you need in a test.
Yes. Makes sense. Okay, let's work on Jeremy's vocabulary before we write any code. We're writing a macro, but like what type of macro are we writing? Is this a proc macro?
Not a proc macro.
Okay. And how remind me what a procedural macro is and why this isn't going to be one?
A procedural macro is implemented using Rust.
Okay.
It's a function. A function that takes token stream.
Okay.
And returns a different, possibly
so that's
different
the
token
AST
stream.
manipulation.
It's token stream manipulation.
Oh, not even in AST yet.
Yeah.
Just at the token level.
Typically, you do parse it into an AST inside your macro implementation.
I see.
And then you do work on the AST, but it's token stream to token stream.
Okay. But what are we doing?
We're doing a completely different kind of macro that historically it predated the procedural macros. It's called macro rules. I don't know why it's called that way. It's a strange name, really. It's macro rules. This is
this
under
thing doesn't
Rust
have a
by
better name because at one point it was the only type of macro.
Yeah, maybe that makes sense.
Like the old school original macros.
Yeah, but here is the name. The Rust reference calls it macros by example. Do you remember me saying that?
That rings a bell.
Macros by example. So macro rules, here's the syntax, but I think it's better that I show you by
Yeah,
example
that's fine.
the macros by example. But even before we implement, we should probably just try to like reimagine the. So I'm going to the
Sure, but sorry, before
test.
before
Yeah,
we do that, is it possible for you to explain to me why we don't want to do token manipulation? That would be possible, but just tedious?
great question. Uh, yeah, I think it's just much more work, because
Okay.
the paradigm in macros by example is like it's like matching against like pattern matching, like quite simple pattern matching, but it can be
Hmm.
recursive, so it's useful. And then like you have bindings to these uh to these tokens that you matched against, and then you can reassemble them in any way you like and insert arbitrary code.
Okay.
So it's an abstraction that frequently is practical for this kind of
Got it.
thing.
But sometimes it's not powerful enough to do
Right,
the thing you need.
right.
Could it
Sometimes you
be
kind of
implemented, or
mm.
is it implemented using proc macros?
You're asking whether macros by example are implemented using procedural macros?
Like, are procedural macros strictly more powerful, and like if I wanted to, I could build the macro rules macro using as a procedural macro? Or is it like a core part of Rust that does things that even Jeremy couldn't do using a
You,
proc macro?
you, you cannot, if your question is whether you can extend macros by example, you cannot extend macros
No,
by
I was just
example.
wondering if so. There's a thing we're going to use called macro underscore rules exclamation mark.
Oh, sorry, I have a volume discrepancy between everything else in my system and your voice.
Oh,
Could you
sorry, mine.
bump yourself up, please?
Yes. Oh yeah, down at a lot less than 100. Okay, that's up to 100 now. Is that too
Thank
much,
you.
or
That's perfect.
okay? I don't know why it keeps changing. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right. So like I guess I was thinking eventually mob start 7.
Different branch though.
Thank you. Get reset that. Okay. Get checkout. Get fetch origin. Get checkout origin slash. Yeah, test macro mob start 7. We're good. Oh, we have not created the branch yet, or am I
I
confused?
did. No, I did. I did. Did I not? Let
Nope,
me
I
see.
wasn't. I was on it. I was detached head. Let me try that
Right.
again. Okay, great. Should I pay attention to this warning?
No, I think in a more recent version of Mob, this was fixed. More warning does not show up in this case because there is
Okay,
nothing to warn about.
great. All right. So we're eventually going to use this thing, macro rules.
That's implementation, yes.
Yeah. And what I was wondering is, could I write this thing myself as a proc macro?
What do you mean by this thing?
Could I implement, you know,
This particular
fnjfly
syntax? No.
macro rules
Oh, no,
as
no,
a proc
not for
macro?
this. Like, if you're asking theoretically or
Yeah,
this particular
theoretically.
syntax, but for that particular syntax, for macro rules bang space curly, is that what you mean? To implement that
Yeah, I'd
exactly?
like to make something where I could write a macro by example and then like, just without any changes, invoke my own macro instead, and have it do the same thing under the hood.
So I'm trying to understand your question here, because what I'm seeing here is not a macro invocation. It's a special syntax for defining a macro.
Yes.
A macro, for example, macro. So macro rules is a keyword, and bang is part of the syntax of how to use it, and then you have to between that bang and then curly, you have to write the name of the macro
Okay.
that you are
Whereas a
defining.
macro invocation would have to have parentheses.
Macro invocation would likely not use macro rules. It would be something like,
My macro.
foo macro, bang. And
Yeah.
after that, it's actually either parentheses or curlies or brackets, if I remember
Okay.
correctly.
So I could write a macro called my macro that takes a
Or,
token stream that looks like
yeah,
this thing.
that looks like, yeah, and any valid token stream inside those curlies or
Okay.
brackets, or I'm pretty sure you do need those. What do you call the thing that is either a curly, a parentheses, or a bracket, or a square bracket? Those are all
Excellent
brackets,
question.
right?
I think they might all be brackets, and then square bracket is how you
Okay.
distinguish.
Yep.
Okay. So I think that makes sense. So we're gonna re-envision the boilerplate here, which really gets us down to a 2-line test, which would be lovely.
Go
This is
ahead.
gonna be like
Yeah.
health
Do what you
check,
think.
I don't know, test. Like this would be like API test,
Yeah.
bang or
Okay.
something, and like health check.
I think you're
Okay,
I think
case
you're
string.
missing curlies. You need something to wrap your entire input in.
So where would I give this test a name?
Somewhere inside the curlies.
Okay, like
It's like you're too free, right? It's a token stream, so even without the quotes, because that looks more like a literal,
sure.
and we want an identifier, because that's going to end up as a name of a function, test function. So that's an identifier. Health check. Okay. Yes.
Okay, that's one way of doing it. Is you just like have this rule that like the very first token is going to get used as the token, that the name of the test function.
That looks like what you're doing here. Yes, that's valid.
Okay.
That's possible.
Would another way of doing it be with something up here?
No.
Okay. What's the idiomatic way of solving this? Is this what you would do?
I don't know enough for idiomatic. It's really whatever. That's what
I sure
macros are
would
used
love
for.
to
In
put something
macros,
here, but
no,
this is not syntactically possible.
I don't think so.
Got it.
But you can do something like name colon and then the name.
Like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not experienced enough with Rust to know what's weird. Like this all seems weird to me, but
That's
I'm learning.
it, right? Like there is no idiom, right? This is the Wild West now.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you get
Well, I
the
mean, I get
complete
that
freedom to do
technically.
whatever makes sense to you.
No, I mean, to push back a little bit, like I get that, like technically anything's possible. I come from Python. Technically anything's possible, but there people seeped in the ecosystem sometimes have expectations or patterns.
I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
because I've not read enough Rust code in the wild. But this
Got
is,
it.
from my perspective, is like, okay, this is the escape hatch from the from Rust itself, kind of, right? From the strictness and the verbosity of this language. This is where
Hmm.
you get to like address your domain the way you kind of, with the syntax that you feel most adequate for your domain.
Yeah. I mean, could we like actually define a function? Like that seems less weird to me. I get
That
that
would
we
actually seem more weird to me because this is your chance to not do this. This is your
okay.
chance to be more succinct.
Let me ask you another question, related possibly. This CTX binding sure looks bogus to my eyes. Will we be able to make this work? And then even if we are able to make it work, should we make it work this way?
I wouldn't like like try to forget that it's that what the implementation behind it is.
Oh, sure. No, I just mean like for a human
Mm?
being reading this code, there's a reference to a variable
Mm.
that shows up nowhere in this file. And
There
that smells
won't
odd
be.
to me.
There won't be.
There won't be what?
There won't be a reference to ctx.client. There won't be any such thing. There will be
Okay.
just what is like, think of what your test is saying and express that as succinctly as possible, as most readably as possible.
Okay. So you want to rethink the the client.
No, I don't want to rethink the client because that's implementation detail.
Sure, sure. I mean, you want to expose an abstraction on top of the client.
In the syntax of the macro.
I see. Okay. We can do that, but I think we're gonna like, we've got like funky stuff like this, which is like a one-off thing.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can do that as well. We can think about that when we get to that. We can do the common case first, right? Like the more common case, and then think, okay, how do we insert that as well?
Okay, I'm gonna rotate. No changes here yet. Oh no, I do have changes. All right, go for it.
Okay. Let's say there's name, identifier, comma.
Would you share, please?
Okay.
Sweet.
Name, identifier, comma. And then what is a typical test? What does it do? It makes a request and asserts on the response, right?
The simplest tests, but I think our less simple tests do some setup first and
But
possibly
that's
do a couple
okay.
rounds of setup, request, assert.
Like what? Like this. This is
Yeah, this is a weirder one. I'm thinking more like something that like inserts some landings into the database and then queries for those landings.
okay. Like what this?
No, this is PR not found, so this is one that doesn't have any setup.
Okay. This.
Maybe. PR not landed.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So that's one where we create a PR that
So
hasn't landed yet.
I'll take this over next to PR not landed. What do we do? We have a connection. That's completely implementation, right?
I mean, doesn't when you say implementation, you mean implementation of the test or
We that it won't show up in the macro as is. Maybe expressed some other way, right? Like that declaratively somehow that we are going to do something with the database, with a database connection, but we're definitely not going to do any of this. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think sort of understand where you're going with this, and I don't know that I'm like sold on the level of abstraction that you're going for, but I'm like down to give it a shot. It's just when you
I,
say,
I appreciate
of
it.
course, we're going to do this, that's where I like have to say, well, I'm not sold yet, but I'm on this
Okay.
journey with you.
Okay, so you've qualified that, and okay, so I'll make my best case.
Sure. I mean, let's do it, and we can stop it
Mm-hmm.
at the end. Like, I'll learn regardless, and we can talk about if it felt right.
And this is a struct that we want to what? Obsert the database with.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
Yeah, we're inserting a row into a table in the database.
And why is PR upsert? Inserts this PR into the database, or does nothing if it's already there.
I think it's because that's what we built in our store crate, because that's what the
Mm-hmm.
fetcher needed. So for
Okay.
this test, it could just be an insert, but we probably didn't create such a function.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in this test we have, so let's say there's a name and maybe assertions, perhaps something like a list of assertions. I'm just mocking. Mocking? Does that make sense that I'm mocking?
Spitballing.
Like a mock-up. And then there is assert, a request on a PR specifically, right? We don't have other. Well, we have two paths, two endpoints, right? So we could say, let me remove this. We could say the request. We don't have parameters, right?
The PR number.
Well, but you have two endpoints, right? So do we like encode that, or do we just use a path? In any case, I think in any case there's ever only just a get currently, right?
Yep.
To some path, right? So there's something that specifies or either the path or the endpoint somehow, right? So that's somehow specified. And then there are assertions on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Assertions
So
on
this
that.
feels like a structure where there would only be one assertion, or one sort of setup, do a thing, assert. And it's possible we've written all our tests that way, but it's also possible that maybe we've written tests that do a longer chain of things.
So for this one, that fits, right?
Sure.
And let's start from the top now. Health
Yeah,
check,
I
okay.
think all the other ones are good. So let's just go to the next one after.
Okay, this one is okay. This one, we need to do that.
Yeah. But that's still in the setup
What
query
setup?
assert.
Here it
Well,
doesn't
I mean,
fit.
it's called assertions right now, but maybe there's a more general like setup
This is
concept.
not an assertion. This is killing the database.
No, I get it. Like, so maybe
Mm-hmm.
instead of assertions, there's some general setup concept. And the setup could be assertions, or it could be,
Okay.
filling the data.
Okay. Next it.
7. All right.
Assertions allow us to be very declarative, because then every assertion is like is just you could like provide a list of those PR struct initializers, right? Like constructing expressions that construct a PR. Is that the only upsertable thing, or is there
I mean, that's the only
anything?
table in our database right now. That's very simple.
Right. So that would make that, declarative and super concise, because our macro will call upsert, await, unwrap on each of them. So in that case, in order to do that for the context database kill database, we'd have to do something else, not to make this assertions list more general, but to have an additional optional, possibly arbitrary setup that is a function.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I can see that.
A function or a block, even a block that just expects there to be some binding in scope.
Yep. Yeah. So if we're going to concede to doing something like that, I would propose that we start there. That is expressive enough to do the assertions, and then, maybe we
Iterate?
make things even simpler by adding assertions as a first class concept, or maybe we identify another layer of helper macro that we could create.
I'm concerned that would be more time consuming. Perhaps if we design it, do our best to design it the way we want it to end up with, and if we could use our imagination to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think maybe let's talk about the next test, because what we need to form an opinion on, there are people, it's a way of doing things. I've never ascribed to this dogma, but of saying tests have three parts: setup, action, assertions. I generally find that it's nice when tests are like that, but sometimes it's nice to have a more of a story where multiple things happen. And I think that's what we're doing here. Maybe not. Let's see. So we insert something into the database.
What is this
We
branch?
insert a landing.
What is this branch get or insert?
Okay, so I'm wrong. This is not multiple things. There's just there's setup. Setup. Do a thing, and then assert. So yeah, all the tests we have right now do fit into that, platonic ideal of a test. Setup, action, assertion. I will say that I don't love the idea of us creating an abstraction that forces us to write all our tests that way. I personally do like the freedom to, set up, action, assertion, then change something, make another action and another assertion.
We always have the freedom to change the macro, to add stuff to the macro.
Sure.
We're not doing this to lose freedom, not causing us to lose the freedom. It's the purpose is to be more expressive and to have less detail in the tests themselves, so that they are more readable as soon as as soon as you recognize and you can read the pattern.
Yeah. I don't know that I agree with the implicit assumption or assertion there is that the tests are not readable. And I don't know that they're that bad. I Rust is already there are things about Rust that make us verbose, and one thing that's disappointing is the level of indentation we've had to create, and the awkwardness around async move, and it would be nice to make all that disappear. I'm just not sold on the everything else is problematic. Insert some stuff into the database, Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're effectively going to be just moving code around, not really like moving code around and making things less flexible. Like Rust is already a Turing complete way of doing the stuff we want to do in the test.
We would be moving things around. We would be moving some detail into the macro implementation. So it's not strictly moving things around and ending up with the same total of code. It would be extracting,
Yeah, so I get like rather than explicitly, like imperatively inserting stuff into the database, we would be
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, let the state of the database be such and such.
Yeah.
And
And flexibility. The macro is, like I said, the macro is, you can always change the macro.
mm-hmm.
That's what I think. What do you think? You want to see
I
it? You
don't,
want to try it?
I mean, I'm down to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I have like used testing frameworks that are this opinionated, and I don't love the idea of like testing infrastructure that has to evolve with every like change we make. I like the idea of like, it still smells to me like there is a thing that we can build that is not going to be likely to change, which is like I want to run some code in the context of a test database. And that is not going to change in the future, So it at least smells to me like two different layers here. There's like some low level
Mm-hmm.
helper that's like, give me a test database, let me run some block of code with that test database. That feels like
Probably.
one macro.
Uh-huh.
And then maybe we build another macro on top of that. And that other macro on top of it might be one that like does need to change as we, identify more interesting features that we're building or more interesting types of tests to write.
Okay. So you want to try to do this incrementally?
I would like to start with just I think we've already identified a use case for
Mm-hmm.
feeding a block to ourselves so that we can do arbitrary shit. So let's build the thing that just eliminates the async move block and or massages it into something else.
Okay.
All right. I can't remember who was going. It was me. So I'll rotate over to you. I mean, like, I'm open to being convinced this is a bad idea if the names become so awkward that it's like, okay, we're inventing layers that shouldn't exist because the naming is impossible. But I'm hopeful that that won't happen.
I am willing to see where your motivation is getting. Motivation. Mm, intuition is getting us.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think I'd call this like, we might not want to call it API test because we might want to leave the potential for a future like
I would
API
forget
test that.
about potential future and call it
Okay.
API test.
Well, let's call it API test for now.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I would do is I'd drop assertions endpoint and assertions and
Mm-hmm.
just give ourselves a block, some callback, or I don't know what the right way to do this is, but want to run some code with access to the CTX finding. Maybe
Mm.
start with health check OK. Maybe just copy the like 2 lines of code from above. That is the actual meat of the test.
What lines?
So we started writing this with health check OK, which I think that test is near the top of the file.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
really, like this test, you can see is like 10 lines, 11 lines, but there's only two things happening. It's
Mm-hmm.
query and assertion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love to just somehow boil it down to really just those two lines.
Mm-hmm.
But that requires access to the CTX binding. And so I just don't know what the right way of doing that is.
Now, there's something I'm not. I don't remember. I don't remember whether it would be possible to like just assume a binding in scope in
Okay.
here.
Yeah. So that was something I was wondering. Can you assume? And then should you assume? Or should you actually like
Okay.
write your macro in a way where the binding's a little visible?
How does this look?
Yeah. So the assumption of CTX smells a little off to me, but I'm curious to learn if it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Let's try.
Sure.
So macro rules, API tests.
Okay.
Now we have a mismatch when we are calling this, because it's already a valid macro, but it's not expecting any tokens. It doesn't expect any tokens. So we
Okay.
have leftover
So,
tokens here.
and that's not really, that's like any macro I write, any macro by example I write, I could then turn around and probably figure out some way of invoking it where there are leftover tokens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, with some, wildcard, I
Got
think.
it. Okay. So we need to, it's
Maybe
like
not.
assuming
Actually,
it's
maybe
assert.
not. I don't think there's like a thing that can accept every remaining token.
Okay.
Or no, I think there is. So macro by example. I want to see the. I wish there was a table of contents here, but these item, block, statement, pattern parameter.
Okay.
I think pattern, expression type, identifier, a path, a token tree. So I think this might be like anything.
Mm-hmm.
Meta, it's an attribute. The contents of an attribute. Lifetime specific token, visibility qualifier, and literal. These are the things that
Okay.
compose, pretty much everything.
I see. That's every type of expression in Rust.
So I'm going to try to consume these parentheses, because that's where this starts. I don't think you can do something like that, because it doesn't know where it starts and where it ends. This is a
Sure.
syntax error. See,
Got
it
it.
expected curly, square, or paren.
Okay.
With a paren, you need that semi, and with a curly, you don't. So what do you prefer?
No preference at this point.
Okay, let's try curly because we don't need the. And then
Yep.
let's try matching on. So this is the kind of the input pattern. So we have this, okay? The curlies,
Okay.
literally curlies.
I see.
But this already. Oh, yeah. So if we don't have this, we will always get the position here, leftover tokens, I suppose. But the error is here now. If we remove these.
Okay.
No, you know what? I think you don't need to match at all.
Okay.
This is implicit. So we start with health check OK. And that we
Got
give
it.
it a name. It's like name and say this is an ident, but this is the syntax, right? Now we are matching on the first token.
Oh,
Does that
cool.
make sense?
Yep. And I see how we are now complaining about the curly brace. Very fun. Boom, 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 click, click, start. All right. Nope. Do not want to write to it. Thank you. Okay, great. So now it says no rules match just curly brace. So inside of here, do I do another pattern match?
What? No.
Okay. What do I do?
It follows in the same parentheses. You do space, white space, and then. So what are we? What is this? Is this expected to be a block? That point?
I don't know. I mean, I think
Can you open that page where
is
we
this a
had
block?
the
Macros by.
I think it could be literal curlies, or it could be an expression. But show us that list here, meta variables. A block. There you go. A block, specifically a block expression, because you can have any expression.
Okay, and a block is a thing that can have those pipes that take parameters.
No, that's a closure.
That's a closure. I see. Okay. All right. I'll check. Okay. So then I say like body, which is like block.
We are matching on it all, and we are returning an empty.
What if I do something like this?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be leftover tokens.
Yeah.
Okay. Neato. Neato. All right. And so then instead we can return, ideally I want to return something that looks like this.
There you go. Yeah.
How would I do that? Do I just write that?
Type it in.
Okay. So this will be like boom, boom, async move.
Well, but like, so start doing the right thing. Start doing,
okay, sure.
Instead of health check not okay, use the name. There you go.
Lovely. And then we'll do async move, and we'll just use our body.
Not quite. Don't forget the text context with.
Thank you. Yep.
Might be easier to copy the entire thing and then to remove the contents.
And we need to just define a function. Okay, there we go. There we go.
I think you have an extra curly that confuses your indentation.
Weird. Okay. And then this will be name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then async move, and this will be body. But body.box, I guess.
I would suggest that you select all of that curly. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And replace
Body.
it with body. Oh.
Okay. Hey, cannot find CTX. So
yeah, that's. I think
sense.
this is not solvable in this way. This is called macro hygiene.
Okay.
In Rust, a binding is not just a binding. It's not just an identifier. It's an identifier that remembers what scope it's actually from.
That is much more sane than just like, I guess, the behavior you get if you do AST manipulation, or does it even work if you do AST manipulation? Or sorry, token manipulation.
You can do whatever manipulation you want, but in the
So even
the
this would happen even if we were implementing this as a proc macro. It would still like understand.
yes,
That's nice. Okay. So then we somehow need to create this binding in here,
yeah.
which is totally reasonable to me. I'm super on board with that.
Right. And I think that would be
So is this the way we want to do it?
yeah. I think so. I
Okay.
think so.
And then do you need parentheses for this to be syntactically valid, or is that
No, no, I don't think so.
okay?
No, I'm
So
not
now
sure
instead,
actually. If you is it syntactically invalid?
I don't know. I can't tell because
The only problem is that the macro does not expect
yeah,
that
okay,
token, and
that's what I
that's a
thought.
block, right?
So
Now
this
we
is
need
called a
something else.
callback, a closure,
But I
but that
don't think the
probably doesn't
closure is
exist.
in that list.
Okay, so we have to build it ourselves. Like
You can do a literal pipe.
I see. Okay, so I will do pipe space, and this is like args or something.
It's I think this won't work. But
Well, let
this
me make it hard coded for now. So I'll do
I
arg is an identifier.
yes. I would
So this
go
just takes
param instead of arg.
param is the
Because
thing. Hat param?
you know
Oh
what?
no, sorry. I see. I see. You were just saying the variable name.
Yes, but
Okay.
that might be related. And then
All
the
right.
body would be a block again. There's no closure.
Sure.
But I think you still, you did not really make that CTX thing a, a binding in that scope. There is no
So,
relationship between the first CTX and the second CTX.
yes. So async move body.
And that's a problem in the pattern itself, not in the implementation.
Yeah. So.
It's regardless of the implementation. It's in the pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like ideally we'd like pass CTX down. Like I don't know if this is possible. Then we get into async move territory
No.
again.
You're not changing the. This would only be fixed by changing the pattern. You're changing the implementation now.
Okay.
See, because nothing in the pattern itself, nothing connects between that parameter to something in that block. The CTX there is just an identifier.
Yeah.
It's not in the same scope as that block.
Okay. That sounds plausible. uh, so how do we fix it?
Rotate?
Or are we fundamentally trying to do something we shouldn't be doing? Next.
No. Let me look at this list. I think the answer is somewhere here.
Okay.
The first thought comes to my mind is don't take a block, take an expression and expect it to be a closure.
Okay.
I'll try that.
You can get rid of the pipes from the past and just change body to an expression.
Yeah. Body expression. Now, but where is the closure? Because that's not equivalent to what we deleted.
Right.
In that case, the closure that we are providing here, it needs to be this one. And then we still have the
Async
nested
move.
async move.
Yeah. That doesn't feel like we're winning.
It doesn't. No. So I wonder what this is. Let's search for lexical structure identifiers. Blah, 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 blah. Identifiers follow the specification in Unicode. That's not interesting. Wait. I completely outside of macro. That's not what I meant to do. I meant to, in here, forwarding a matched fragment. I'm forwarding a matched fragment to another macro by example. No. Meta variables, repetitions, scoping, exporting. Historical reasons, scoping of macros. No, that's not the scoping of macros. It's textual scope. Sorry. Largely on the order that things appear in source files and work similar to the scope of local variables declared with let. Macro users define a macro. The macro enters the scope after the definition. That's not it. Macro use attribute, path-based scope, hygiene. By default, all identifiers referred to in a macro are expanded as is and are looked up at the macro's invocation site. This can lead to issues if a macro refers to an item or macro which isn't in scope at the invocation site. To alleviate this, the create meta variable can be used at the start of a path, but that's an item. We're talking about a binding. Not that because create refers to the current. Additionally, even though create the macro is, that's not it either. Follow set. I don't think that has anything to do with it. And that's all we have here. Then I wonder if in that case, describing file does not look ahead past the identifier to see if the following token is a local ambiguity. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, I don't know where this is described, but not in this document.
Okay.
Apparently. So I will think. Can we just kind of undo the deletion? I want to see the original. Actually, wait. Health check okay is a lot like health check not okay, right?
Yep.
Like
just replace the name and the 2 lines of code.
Remove that. and it's like, I don't know, okay.
I mean, you can just take it. We've got it on line 23,
What
the
do you
original
mean?
thing. The original thing is lines 22 and 23.
These,
Yeah,
I
that's it.
think.
Perfect.
Right, the search status is. We can change the name here. Discord.
Yep.
So CTX is from here. I don't know how to do this. I'm thinking my only thought is that maybe this has somehow the understanding that there will be a binding there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really see how it would be in the same scope. So I don't think it's possible.
Bummer. Does that mean if we wanted to do this, we'd have to write a proc macro?
Uh,
Or does that not even solve the problem? Because we still got this like scope of the binding, scope of the reference issue.
I think with a proc macro it would be possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure because as soon as the thing, let me rotate proc macro. As soon as the thing you're taking in is like an expression, an actual expression or macro. Sorry, an actual expression or a function item. No, a block. A block, right? A block a block. With a block, you cannot expect some binding to exist. I think with an expression, we can try with an expression if we like. I don't think it'll be different. Share screen.
Didn't we try with an expression?
We tried with an expression, but we passed in a closure. That's not what we wanted to do.
Oh, okay. So here we are. Our pattern match is matching on an expression.
Yeah, but
What are you
so
thinking?
change the invocation, remove pipe CTX by remove the parameter list, remove CTX
Okay.
from there. Now that expression happens to be a block. Okay?
Okay.
And in that, what errors do we have?
So it's just the two here. Expected async and expression. Maybe that's easier to see.
Why is it? What isn't it equivalent to the to the real health check? Okay, to the current health check. Okay. What's the block?
It expects async, pipe, or double pipe, but instead it found a curly brace. And that is what body is. It's a curly brace. So I don't know. I mean, like we could do that maybe.
No, but that's not the equivalent. That's not what we have in the health check. Okay, current health check. Okay, async. We have async move, right?
Yeah, I see.
And then
Yeah, you're saying like
try
async move seems to
this,
be okay with taking
but async move are
blocks.
modifiers on that block. So try parenthesis around async move and the body, put them together with the body, so that maybe that would. So it's like I think what we're kind of trying to implement here is to meld two parts into one complete expression. Does that make sense to you? Like
I think
async
so.
and
So
move are.
let's explore this with tree sitter. That would tell us, right?
I never did that, but
I,
I know that I know what those elements are.
okay. Well, this
I
would be
know
useful
that
for me.
I know that async and move are modifiers on the block, just by familiar with the language.
It's so hard to do. I've done this before. It's very useful.
You want to see AST? That's what you want to see?
The playground. Yeah. Inspect tree. There we go. Doesn't have tree sitter in the name. That's why I got confused. Okay. Great. So I think if I understood what you're saying is like, it's not like this block is an expression unto itself. This
Yep.
async move is like a key piece of it.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So there is a token called async block.
Yep. It's even maybe it's even a different kind of
Yeah. It
token
looks
at
like the
all.
move
It's
is
not even a
part of that as
modifier.
well. Yeah. So yeah, I
I
think
think
I
no,
agree.
I think it is a modifier. In the token tree, it's a modifier. Is this
Okay.
a token tree or is it
No, this is the AST.
AST?
So a little different, but
Mm-hmm.
we're dealing with, we're operating at the AST level with these macros by example, aren't we?
N-
Or are we operating at the
n-
token level?
I think it's AST because if you look at
Yeah.
at the names of the items there, right?
Yeah.
In that
They
list,
feel like AST things, not, yeah. Okay. So that makes sense at least. Like,
Rust
I get
syntax fragments, the kind
syntax.
specified. Syntax fragments sounds. I don't. It's kind of ambiguous, but an item, I think, is not a thing in the token tree. It's like an item's not a token.
Mm-hmm.
An item, it's fn space, parameter list. That's not a token. That's an AST item.
Makes sense. A token tree. Uh, oh, this is like a recursive macro.
Maybe we can do that. Maybe that's the solution. Try that.
Okay. TT.
Just instead of the expression, say, okay, this is not an expression. I'm sorry, it's a token tree.
Okay.
And then we're back
That.
to there is no such binding.
Exciting. Okay, so we got rid of the async move, but we do
So we
need to
can,
somehow
yeah.
make that CTX present. Can we go back to this?
I don't think that's what we want, though. I don't think that helps us. I don't think that'll be. I don't think there's a way to like meld them together to say, oh, because the problem.
Yeah, I think I get it.
CTX, the CTX in line 12 and the CTX in line 13, which is inside the body, are not in the same scope.
Sure. I get that. And I'm okay with like, prop drilling it down. Like that feels totally reasonable to me.
Uh,
but I just don't think it's possible to prop drill this thing down. Is it?
it might be. Then we have an extra closure, and then you kind of have to explain it in the implementation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we care about the performance or number of invocations or number of stack frames. So it seems
So
against the promise of zero cost abstractions, I guess.
this is just another limitation of macro by example.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like, well, macro by example is made for things more declarative.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just making it up. But what I really want to say is it would work better if you go more abstract.
Yeah. Right. Like if we didn't let ourselves sort of eject into this like arbitrary, although it still would be weird, right? Like how would we write the assertions? Like I get that we could like pass structs for the setup. That makes sense. But the assertions, we're going to have to like feed a response to them. Unless I guess we just go full declarative, which is like we just say like abstractly assert that the response was such and such. And so it's not just assertions, it's like specific types of assertions and parameters
Yep.
to the assertion function.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I agree we could do it. It doesn't seem like an improvement to me over what we have right now.
Mm.
In main, I mean.
Really? If you look at the comparison eventually between such a test and the test we have now, I think what you'll see is the macro invocation test is shorter. It's more concise.
Yeah, that is appealing.
And that to me seems like overall in a project, I would like that. I would like to see, as long as it's readable, it explains itself in the domain, and it's saying you don't need to look at all this functions and method calls. You just see this is the pattern here, like you said, setup, but it's more specific than setup,
Mm-hmm.
action, and assertion, because the setup is certain kinds of things in this domain. The action is a certain kind of thing in this domain, and the assertions are a certain kind of assertion in this domain, right?
Yeah. No, I get it. It's just like, that stopping of the database is going to float up to our macro, right? There's going to be like a Boolean that's like stop the database before doing the action or something. It's going to be like a weird
Well,
one.
maybe. I think it could be a closure that is optional, and then you can do whatever you like.
But then we've got the same damn problem because we need
But
to
you
pass.
don't have to. No, but there's no problem with a closure. I mean, it might
Oh,
need
I
to,
see. Sorry. Right. Like we can just accept that they're going to have to write an async move
or
closure.
maybe not, or maybe we can make it a synchronous closure and deal with the fact that it returns a future. I think that's also possible.
Okay. So when you're
Or maybe that
inside,
could also solve our current problem. That
that's
the
where I was
closure
about to go.
doesn't need to be async at
But
all.
they'd still need the move keyword.
That's no, I didn't. No, I think that's impossible.
Okay.
I mean, that's actually interesting. No, it would, yeah, it would still need the move keyword, I suppose. You can't. You can. If you use the token tree version, then I think that's possible. Move, but then, yeah, I think that's possible.
Okay, let's give it a shot.
Be back in a moment.
Okay. Okie dokie. Just fix the CTX. Not like trying to map meta variable body T. That's not a token tree. Is that our issue?
All right.
Hello. Okay, this is where we were. I don't understand what the plan is. So are you thinking we remove the async keyword here, but also don't put it in here?
We would need to call the macro with a closure, because there's no other way. I don't think there's any other way for you to have CTX.
Sure. So this is a closure.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do I get my hands on that closure?
And this is a closure not for the purpose of having environment, because all it does it uses CTX, right? It uses the parameter. So there is no reason to use the move, right?
Okay.
So I think we would just this could be this could be an expression instead of a token tree.
Okay. Or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe we should
Okay.
not call it body now. We should call it something else, like closure.
Sure. Okay. And then here's that issue again.
And then now I think so. I think delete that the contents of that, and yeah, delete that line. Yeah, okay, and then paste back from what we have in line 31 to 35.
Sure.
Paste that back in, and now, yeah, now you can, I think, just call. But there's an await there. Is there? There's an await. Okay, line 27 has an await, right?
Mm-hmm.
So line 26, and there are no async closures. So line 26 needs to be, they have the word async before the block. It needs to be a closure that returns an async block, not before the, yeah, because there are no async closures. So yeah, that.
Okay.
Okay.
Then how do I pass the parameter to this thing? Parentheses? Hey, okay. Now it wants a type. That's unfortunate. Can I give it a type up here?
That's interesting. Like, why this type needs to be known, because in that scope in 926, no, I don't think there's, I don't think the connection in inference is established by
Yeah.
usage through a macro expansion. But of course, it'll
And
be a
that gives me
mismatch
a type
type
error. Great.
in macro expansion.
So it understands
Yeah,
everything here, but
yeah.
isn't doing the inference. Okay, makes sense. Uh-oh, lifetime.
Uh, wait. So there is no mismatch? Okay, good.
We're out of the typing universe and into
Ace,
lifetime borrow
ace,
checking.
and now we have the async move again. This would be a move, async move.
Still something about a lifetime.
Contains a lifetime. What?
Lifetime may not live long enough. Returning this value requires that one outlive two.
What's test context? I'm sorry. Isn't there a does test context have a lifetime? Because I'm surprised that you don't have to specify a lifetime for test context.
I
Isn't
don't
that
know
an
if it has
error
a.
already?
Oh, it looks like it maybe does have a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, you must like, how does it let you? Is that not an error already that you're not specifying that lifetime?
I don't know. I mean, we aren't specifying it like here.
You are, but syntactically there's you know, there's underscore.
Yeah, I mean that's sorry, my type hints are confusing. That's not code we wrote.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. But if you did, you'd have to do that. I think that cannot be omitted. I don't think I
I see. I see. When it's inferred, right?
don't
Okay,
think
that
it can
makes
be
sense.
omitted.
That makes sense. But we're not getting an
But
error
but
about
also, I
that.
don't think you can use unders. Maybe you can.
I don't know. Didn't change the error we're getting here.
No. Async move. We're moving CTX. Is CTX is not. Is it as a reference? Is it a reference CTX?
I don't think so. This is not a reference, and we're not using an ampersand here.
Well, go to test context with. I think we
I mean,
recently
I
changed
can
it to
tell
be
from
owned.
here, right? It's not
Oh,
a
you're
reference.
right. Yeah, you're right. The return type of the closure. The closure itself contains a lifetime. The closure itself borrows something. Don't know what it borrows. Maybe just because it's a. No, it borrows.
Is this more helpful?
It borrows the CTX, I think.
Return a
Returning this
closure.
value requires to. Yeah, that one. Whoops. One must outlive two. What is one that has type context? Lifetime one, and the closure. The return type of closure is some async block contains lifetime 2. And one must outlive 2. So, but there is no, I don't think there's a way to
So how
specify
did you figure out which one's one and which one's two?
the blue. It tells you has type, test context of lifetime 1.
Mm-hmm.
And the second, the line above it says return type of closure, blah, blah, blah,
Yes.
contains a lifetime 2.
Okay. So it's saying the closure has lifetime two, the CTX has lifetime one.
Right. And that's just automatic naming of those,
Okay.
anonymous lifetimes.
Got it.
And because that CTX is moved into the closure, yeah, well, it must outlive. But how do we cannot specify that. We cannot guarantee that. There's no way to guarantee that.
Okay.
Because it's a test context has a reference in it, and then what, you're going to move it into some block, into some async block, and say, here you go, this is take it back. I think that should be possible because the caller receives it back. So I think it's just, so if it was just a function, not a closure, we would have been able to say, yeah, this is A and that is
Okay.
A.
Well, a function would solve the naming issue we have. Because then we'd be able to give the function a name, right?
But there's no function expressions. There are only function.
Got it.
There are only functions, items.
Items. Okay. So,
But we can do that because you can expand a function item inside.
so this would look something like, I'll check OK.
But you cannot. But then we'd have a redundant name because functions need names, and you cannot use only the name, just the name, and extract it and use it as the name of the test.
I see. Okay.
So that's awkward. And what we really want, I think there's closures. Can't you do something like? But then it would just be verbose. Even if we could somehow specify the return type of the closure, and you can specify the return type of the closure. You can do an arrow, I think, after the parameter list.
Where? Sorry.
Try that. No, not with with the closure variant. I think functions would be take us to undesirable.
Okay, here?
In line 26, after the parameter list, we want to say after the parameter list, that means the second pipe.
Yep.
We want to say thin arrow. Something like impl future. Where the output, like of output equals output equals unit unit is unit type. But I don't can you show me the type of the trait future, because I don't think it takes a lifetime.
The type of the trait feature. Okay.
Maybe in a macro invocation it doesn't. There is no future. I think you can.
Future. Pub trait future.
Yeah, you see that it doesn't. No, maybe box future. Yeah, box future takes a lifetime.
Yes, it does.
So you can do that instead of impl future. It'll be, and that's not an impl box future because that's not a trait. It'll be just a box future, and then there's no output. There's like of lifetime A and unit.
Okay.
And then you say test context of lifetime A to associate between the lifetimes, and then you need an additional block because now you have a return type.
An additional block.
You see the error that you have, and like it says try. That's maybe
This thing here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you need to call boxed on that block.
Okay. This looks All right.
And then how do we get the lifetime A? Where do you get the lifetime A from?
Just
We
up
need
here.
maybe the keyword for. Can we use that?
4.
Outside for and then open. Yeah, maybe, or maybe that's not a thing with closures. Binders for closures are experimental.
Neat.
So I think we're stuck. This is as far as proc macros bring us. Um, try now that we have a box future that can carry a lifetime. Try not specifying the lifetime on either.
So do I do an
Yeah, just
underscore?
no
Or?
underscore. Just delete it. I think maybe underscore would work as well, and delete that as well, and delete the.
Okay.
It's still 1 and 2. It doesn't automatically infer that this input and output are the same. Maybe that
Okay.
only happens in functions. Maybe that doesn't happen in closure.
Mhm.
And this is probably as far as I can take us with into this kind of variant where we provide a closure expression there.
Okay. So I got a question. Um, like just inventing syntax that I would like to write
Mm-hmm.
that feels more, like what the Python person in me would do. Like these look and feel like Python decorators to me. I get that they're not, but like this would be like a, DB test or whatever. And then like what ideally I'd write is something that looks a lot like this, but without some of the bullshit. Like it would take like a CTX test context. All of this goes away. Oops.
Yeah, I think you can do that with the procedural macro.
And I'd rather not specify the type. I'd rather have that inferred. If that actually,
Mm,
can you have parameters types? You can't. You have to be explicit about your inputs, right? In Rust,
uh,
is that how that works?
a procedural macro can accept syntax that looks like a function, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a function.
Oh,
Like that would otherwise be valid. So you can see
oh,
weird things like, oh, this looks like a function, but actually there are no types for the parameters.
mhm. Okay.
And then you
Well,
would
I mean,
see
I
the
don't.
attribute above the function, and you'd say, oh, okay, it's an attribute. It's a proc macro.
So, is this thing a proc macro?
Yes.
Okay. Whenever you see this hashtag, whatever, does that mean it's a proc macro?
There are some built-in attributes in Rust, so
Oh,
not
okay.
always.
Got it. Well, okay, sure. So this is the code I'd like to write. And like in Python, the way you would do this is you'd write it. This would be a decorator. It would not be a zero cost abstraction. There'd be an extra function call. Um, but what I like about this
Mm-hmm.
is it like looks a whole lot like these. It's just they take an extra parameter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
would this be like a huge pain to build this thing called DB test?
No, not a huge pain.
Does that seem like something worth trying? Or where's your head
I
at
just
right now?
my thought about that is that I would actually prefer. I think I would prefer the completely declarative approach
Mm-hmm.
that you seem reluctant to agree with.
I mean, I'm down to do it. I 100% agree that the tests we have right now
Mm-hmm.
will allow us to do it. I think
Mm-hmm.
in the future, if we, add more features, whatever, and we have to keep touching that thing, I'm gonna feel like we're just doing things in two places rather than one. And it's not. I'm not. I'm down to do it, but
Mm-hmm.
my gut is that it's just gonna be like it will let us write like the most human readable, you know, bare minimum tests right now, and then
Mm-hmm.
will not leave us the flexibility to write the other types of tests we're going to need to write in the future.
Well,
And I
here's a
get that
thought.
we can change
Mhm.
it.
Well, here's a thought. If we couldn't implement that closure that we wanted to take a test context at all as an input for as an expression for this macro, what would we do with the for the test that kills the database? How do we do arbitrary, right, actions on the test context? We couldn't. That's exactly what we couldn't do. We couldn't do arbitrary
Yep.
actions on the test context.
Yeah.
It's
So my
exactly what we
inclination would be
couldn't
to
do.
like stick with what we have in main, but I'm down to do it. It'll be a learning experience for me regardless. Like to do by it, I
The,
mean the fully
mhm.
declarative approach.
the the reason we couldn't do it had to do with lifetimes, and that's because test context contains a lifetime. Can we look into maybe it not containing a lifetime? Where is that lifetime from?
I don't know.
Can we see where
Uh,
the type of test context?
so that would be reintroduce this code.
No, let's just look at the type of test context.
Okay. Why does it have a lifetime? Because we wrote a lifetime to use it here.
And
Database context that it contains.
and the second in both fields.
Oh yeah, sure. Test clients as well.
If these two were owned, we that it would be we wouldn't have had that problem. I think been we would have gotten
Mm-hmm.
past that.
Okay.
How about we try to do that?
Sure. How would we do that?
I would look into why these are references. Why? Okay, so well, sorry. The database context is one, and I would start with the what I'm not certain. I'm pretty certain that we can provide an owned database context. That sounds pretty easy.
Okay. That is just like that would look something like this.
Well, not mute.
So like that.
Yeah. And then follow
And
the
then,
errors.
well, okay, let me make sure we don't have any errors to start because I don't want to get too confused here. So I'm just going to comment all this out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I've got some warnings, but that's fine. I can live with the warnings. So there we go. All right, now we've got a couple of errors. One is cannot borrow ctx.db is mutable as is not declared mutable. Does that mean I need a mutable context here?
It's not the type; it's just the binding,
Okay,
and you
so I
have an
just
auto fix for
say
that.
mute. Oh, there's a, okay. Let me try it. Do-do-do-do. Extract into variable. No, maybe over here. Consider
Maybe because
changes
it's
to
a
be mutable.
parameter. Oh, there
Great.
it is.
Okay. So that's happy. And then mismatch types expect blah, but found blah. Okay. So now we've got ourselves a reference, a mutable reference to a database context. How would I make this happen?
Where do we get this DB context
From
from? From
the
database context
database
with.
context helper. Yeah.
Can database context pass by an owned instead of?
With CTX, I mean, it wants to be able to drop it afterward, but maybe that can be implicit. I don't know.
Just
So like,
just to not.
try that
Yeah,
is what
just
you're saying?
pass it. And then you cannot drop it.
Sure. And then this will take
Change the F.
to just mute self.
No, the self, right?
Okay, great. Great. Then missing lifetime specifier here. This function's return type contains a borrowed value. There's no value for it to be borrowed from.
What borrowed value?
If we get a better error here. Consider using the static lifetime, but this is uncommon unless you're returning a borrowed value from a const or a static.
What's T? It's
Don't
F.
know.
Local box feature. Uncommon. Is it uncommon? I think it is static. Why is it saying it's uncommon? Local box feature. What is it? What is it borrowing? It's not borrowing anything. It is static. That might be kind of misleading. Try
Okay.
static.
To do static like that. Okay. And we have different errors. A lot of warnings too. So like here, it doesn't like that it claims that it borrows database context, but it may outlive the function.
What? Where is this? What is this? What's the
DB
context here?
REPL. So
The
we've got other
DB.
ones too. We don't have to look at this one. It
No,
also
no.
happens in,
This.
maybe let's stay with the test because that's what we were talking about.
I don't mind which one.
Okay.
The way that this uses database context with is that, so we need an async move basically.
Maybe.
99.
Okay. Seems happy.
Because now it's owned, so we move it into the
Okay.
block, return it.
Got it. Okay, so I'll do the same treatment here. Great. Things are happening. Now we're down to test.rs, which has an issue on 137. Really? I must be looking at the wrong test.rs. Fetcher, serve test.rs. Here we go. Okay. We've got a test context for the fetcher. So I guess we need to give this the same treatment probably. Test context
Yeah, and now the test context will. What is the type now of DB context in test context?
It is a regular old DB context. So
And what?
if we go in here,
What?
do we just remove the ref lifetime thing?
Oh, I thought that's what I asked. That's what I meant to ask. What's the type of the field? Yeah, remove that reference, make it owned,
Okay.
and then test context is owned. Now you
Oh
have some
boy.
other places. Just don't even use the terminal. You can navigate through errors and solve them one at a time. Now these are trivial. You've just removed a lifetime parameter, right? So just
Okay.
follow through on that. Oh well, yeah, that's not the end of it, right? Like, so now A doesn't exist. Like, there's no.
Just A right here.
Just remove B, I suppose.
Remove B as well.
Just B, just B,
Oh, I see.
or
Okay. And
however
then
you want
change
to
this to
see it.
A.
Yeah.
Sure. And then this goes away. And the mute goes. I don't understand the syntax yet. Something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, maybe.
Yes, that looks right.
Okay. And then here we're just handing this thing off, and then we're not going to drop it because we're like just transferring ownership of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then
What is this? What's the context here?
the trait bound blah.
What is this?
So we
What is
got.
async function run? What is that?
I think this is the thing that triggers the tester to run. So we likely run the underlying run function of our crate and just saves us from like passing the database context and GitHub client to it. It's just like a helper function that just takes branch patterns.
So what's the error? I don't see the show me the actual error. Should I see it, please? Like pick
I
one.
mean, I see
Pick
red
one.
in a number of places. So here's one. The trait bound ref mute GitHub client is not specified.
Where's
Didn't
that trait bound
intentionally.
coming from? Go to
That's
go to the
self.
definition of crate run.
Mm-hmm.
See that DB connection. Wait, how did that type change? But PG connection is from the database context.
Should be. I mean, that might be the thing that changed. I don't know. Uh, this is a PG connection, and we're passing a ref mute to it, so that seems fine.
Mm-hmm. I think this can be owned. Pass the connection as is. It does not
Okay.
get reused anywhere.
And we have to change run
Mm-hmm.
to take a connection.
Yep.
Okay. This feels like we're stepping into production code. That smells a little off to me. Like, is there some way of doing this that doesn't cross the boundary
No,
from test code to production
I
code?
I don't think so because it's asynchronous code. So if you're changing something to be, if it was synchronous code, you could have said, right, because it's all blocking. Your stack is blocking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes depth, right? Depth, and when it goes deep, you know that the outer scopes are still in scope, so all those bindings are still relevant, is still
Okay.
alive, and all those references are still alive.
Hmm.
So you could have, just continued to pass references into those inner calls, and that would have been
Okay.
fine. But in an async stack, it's like you can't do that anymore. You have to, move stuff in.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, if I know what I'm saying.
I mean, that sounds plausible, but it also seems like there are going to be situations where we want to. I mean, we might even have code like this that passes the DB connection in, but then intends to use it again afterwards. Like you're right that like you can't guarantee that the parent frames are still around, but sometimes they are, and they're doing a few things.
Yeah, like, did I just say that you cannot pass references in an async stack? I didn't mean to say that. I think I did mean to say that. I think I was just wrong. I think that has to do with pinning, and that the parent, yeah, that's how that works. The parent is still alive, but yeah, so that works. So that's not the reason we are. I think that has to do with something else. I think that has to do with. So if you are just calling an async function, passing in a reference, and then the future the future, maybe if you're immediately awaiting that future, that's fine. Does that make sense? But if you are, if
Mm-hmm.
if you are, if something is returning of a value like a future,
Yeah.
and then you want to pass that future around, that's where that doesn't work anymore.
Right. That makes sense. So given that both usages are possible,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it like sort of makes sense that like having the ownership live high up and passing references down is the only thing that supports both use cases.
Yeah. So run could possibly still take a
So
reference.
I agree. I think run should take a reference if we can make that work somehow.
Okay, so go back and see what's the problem there. Like we don't.
This is not a reference, but can I fix that with an ampersand?
But hold on. Screen lock. Yeah. Uh, we have like this async function run. We have another run. I'm not sure which is which. What is what?
This is the test helper,
That's
the
a
one that just
test
takes
helper.
branch patterns. Yep,
Uh huh.
and just
But
takes branch
it already
patterns. And
takes ref mute. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what's the error there? Something with trait bounds?
yeah, I don't know. Uh,
Pick one.
okay, here's the first one. The trait bound ref mute test context GitHub client is not specified. The trait GitHub client is implemented for block.
Oh. We have an implementation of GitHub client, like of GitHub client for the owned thing and not for the for those are just simply another thing.
I don't understand what we changed.
We lost an implementation because we're passing something different. But that here nothing.
We didn't
What is
change.
ref mute self? What is self? Self is test context, right? I think we simply lost the implementation of something for test context or for database context
because
we're
it no longer
implementing
takes
it
the
for a
life.
reference instead of for.
Okay. Got it.
So we could find the implementation.
There we go. This is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then instead of for ref mute,
well,
it's just for test
right.
context
And
or
so
something.
it could, yeah, maybe that's best, because test context, we don't pass it by reference anymore. Possibly. Does that error still exist?
Let's see. Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know. There are errors on this line of code. The trait bound ref mute blah is not context is not
So
satisfied.
so GitHub client is now so this function, async function run, takes a ref mute self. It takes self by reference. Should it take self by reference? Not this one. The parent.
Oh, I see.
Should it take a ref mute self? Because this is the final thing that you're going to do with the test context, right? You're gonna, what is run? Sorry.
I don't know that it's the final thing. We might have
What
tests that do
is self
multiple
here?
runs. I'm pretty sure we do have tests
Is
that
it
do
database
multiple runs.
context? Self?
Test
What is that?
context for
Test
CR tracker
context
fetcher.
for fetcher. Test context for fetcher.
But I mean, wouldn't you expect that we have some tests that like do multiple runs? Like we do a run, we change something, we do another run.
But I'm running out of time, so
yeah, okay.
Tomorrow.
Sounds good. Next. All right. We'll see where this goes. Stay tuned for the thrilling conclusion.
Yes. Good work today.
You too.
Jeremy. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Please like, share with anyone they feel, and if you feel like participating, then please join us. Till next time, be well.
Bye.